Mama Africa, Mama Africa, am I coming home? Am I coming home? Hello, Mama Africa, how are you? I'm feeling fine.
Hey guys, if you're new here, I am Donna Lee. I go by Donna Truly all around the internet. One of the most frequent questions I get from people who read my blog or who just know me in real life is what's the difference between living in Jamaica versus living in Rwanda? So I was originally born and raised in Jamaica, went to school there, lived there, my family's all there, all of that. I lived in the States for 8 years, went to school, worked there, and then I went back to Jamaica for a little bit before moving to Rwanda. So I've lived in Rwanda for the past 3 years. I get this question all the time, and it's such an obvious question, but really it's something I don't think about a lot because as far as I'm concerned, the two countries are so different that I don't even really take time to compare them. But since I get the question, I do want to answer it. So the only caveat I'm going to give is that this is very subjective, right? So it's based on the experience that I have just being from Mobay, living in Jamaica, my part of Jamaica, which is not the same as Kingston or anywhere else in Jamaica, and also from living in Rwanda, but as a foreigner and as somebody who's not from here. So my perspective is very limited in that sense, right? Fun fact about Rwanda and Jamaica is that both of them gained independence in 1962. So Rwanda was in July and then Jamaica was in August. Both of them are usually talked about as very small countries. So Rwanda is actually about the size of Haiti. It has 11 million people and it's a landlocked country, right? Whereas Jamaica is less than half the size of Rwanda. It has 3 million people, but we're an island, so we're surrounded by the Caribbean Sea / Atlantic Ocean, right? But the main thing that I think about when I think about difference between Jamaica and Rwanda is language, because that's the first thing I think that hit me when I got here. So in Jamaica, our official language is English. That's what we're taught all throughout school. You learn to write in English, you do all your tests in English, all of that. Depending on what school you go to, you might be able to learn a second language, which is usually going to be Spanish and in some cases French, right? Now, in Rwanda, the colonial language is French, but the mother tongue or the native language is Kinyarwanda. And then English was added as an official language in 2008, late 2008, early 2009, which basically means that any one of those three languages can hit you at any given time of the day. Plus, because of all the migration and just the general movement between people in the East African community, you will hear Kiswahili a lot, you will hear Kirundi a lot. So I just feel like living in Rwanda, you just have to be a multilingual person if you want to get the full picture. Now, that being said, I am so ashamed of my complete lack of Kinyarwanda skills. So I speak English here, as much as I would speak it anywhere else, basically. But I do feel that you miss a lot of Rwanda if you don't speak Kinyarwanda, because that's the language of the people, right? And if you're in a rural area, especially where people would be less educated, so less likely to have gone to university or finished secondary school, they would not have learned English since it only became the language in 2008, right? They're not going to be fluent in it. Though in the city, in the capital, Kigali, which is where I live, I get by with English, but I do think it's very different in that way from Jamaica, where if you go to Jamaica, even if you don't speak patois, you can still have like full-out conversations with people because everybody's speaking to you in English, right? I think a lot of times people don't get that because what they hear of Jamaica is like dancehall and reggae, which is patois. So they think that we talk that way all the time, but that's a really, really big. But the second difference, which is not really a big difference, but is one that I care about a lot, is that there isn't beach the way that we think of it as Jamaicans in Rwanda. So when Rwanda talk about going to the beach, they talk about going to Lake Kivu, which is the biggest lake in the country. Beautiful lake, but it's fresh water, so it's not what we would normally think of as beach in Jamaica, right? Beach for us is salt water and sand that you can play in all day and all that kind of thing. It's not exactly the same here because it's landlocked, so they don't have seawater or ocean water coming in to make a beach. Third difference, which is a huge one, I think, is just the nature of politics here versus Jamaica. Anybody in Jamaica can tell you politics is like a full-time ongoing war. It feels like Jamaica is very heavily bipartisan. So we have two major parties, PNP and JLP. And now that I'm thinking about it, so orange is the color of PNP. I did not do this on purpose. Somebody's going to say, oh, that's why you're wearing orange. No. But politics in Jamaica just feels like an ongoing election. Like people are running an election all the time. It feels like it never ends. And there's the national elections, which happen every 5 years, or a local government election, or as a party internal election. Like it never stops. And I feel like it actually hurts the country because we're so focused on the partisan nature of it that nobody's really focused on what's best for the country. They're focused on what's best for their party and what's going to get them elected, right? Whereas here in Rwanda, they do have multiple parties, but the current president's party is the one that really dominates and gets voted in by significant margins that you would never see in Jamaica. So Jamaica, we be having elections that are like 48% to 52, right? Here there is like overwhelming support for the current leader of the country. So you don't really have that ongoing fight that's always happening. And I think it makes it easier for the country to focus on its goals because you're not always fighting over who's going to win the next election, right? I think another thing that Rwanda does really well is I feel like policies and politics here is very data driven. So there's this sense of accountability, to me at least, as an outsider. I feel as if I always hear people talking about, well, this percentage of this thing happens, so that's why we have this new policy, right? And the whole country talks a lot about Vision 2020, which is the country's national plan for becoming a middle income country by the year 2020. So there's a whole document, like a manifesto, that sets out what the country is doing to get there. And, people are held accountable to that. And you hear the president talking about it, and you hear local leaders or even just the average person on the street talking about what it means that Rwanda is becoming a knowledge-based economy and all these things which came from that document, right? Contrast is not to Jamaica, where we actually do have a document called Vision 2030. But when I talk to my friends, even my friends who are heavy into politics or who work for government, they're like, nobody cares, right? Because again, we're fighting about politics instead of really driving towards those goals. One thing I'll say though, in the last election, which just happened, the party that won, they put out a manifesto and they really like outlined stuff in a way that's similar to what I see Rwanda do. So I think we're like inching towards that direction, and I see people now trying to hold them accountable. Like, another big difference here is in terms of sports and entertainment. So Jamaicans, we are rabid about sports. I mean, the way that we act about football and track and field and just anywhere where there's a Jamaican athlete, we're so just excited about it. I remember when Jamaica went to the World Cup for the first time, only time actually, in 1998. It was a Sunday, and I remember the Prime Minister coming out on the football field after we won the match to declare that the next day was going to be a national holiday, right? I don't even know if people in other countries do things like that. When the Olympics are going on, people put out big screen TVs like in the middle of the road. People will be late for work because they're watching Olympic races and all that kind of thing. I remember my pastor being at church, and like the Cricket World Cup was going on, and my pastor being like, okay, so the sermon today is going to be abbreviated so that you can go home and watch World Cup, right? Like we put a lot of priority on that. I think because Rwanda's sports industry is just beginning in a way, or it's not as developed. There's not a lot of corporate sponsorship tied to it and that kind of thing. There's less of that national hysteria, like sustained hysteria. So like when there are certain football matches, you will definitely see people, driving all around, blowing their horns, painted faces and all of that. Cycling is also really, really big here. I remember they have a Tour de Rwanda, which is like the Tour de France, right? And the day of the last one, I saw people standing up in the rain. I was like, yo, because that is something you don't really see in Rwanda. When the rain starts falling, everybody gone home, right? And so, or at least run for cover, right? But I remember watching the Tour de Rwanda this year, and people were just out in the rain, just watching because they were so invested. So I feel like cycling is about to be, or is, like Rwanda's big sport, and it's one that has a lot of visible support now from international partners, from corporate sponsors and that kind of thing. And so maybe in the next 5-10 years, there's going to be like a cycling superstar coming from Rwanda. Football has a lot of love too, but I think probably needs a lot more money to take it to the global stage. And when I checked, I have never seen Rwanda having won an Olympic medal, although I think they've won one Paralympic medal. So lots of room there to grow. I feel like, especially with the hills, there's a lot of room for them to have like a marathon running champion, right? The way that Kenya and Ethiopia have it. I just think they need more money to make it happen. Oh, so while we're talking about sports, I had to mention cricket because the Rwandan cricket captain now has the Guinness World Record for longest time at bat or something like that, like 54 hours of consecutive batting, which he did about a month ago, actually, and it drew a lot of attention to the sport here. He was also, I believe, running a fundraiser or in conjunction with Rwanda's cricket board or some other supporting organization. The point of which is to build Rwanda's first like international grade cricket pitch because they don't have one yet. So, they might come, man. They might come. If you have other questions about living in Mobay versus living in Kigali or living in Jamaica versus living in Rwanda, you can leave me some comments and I will try to answer them. If anybody who's from Jamaica or from Rwanda watch the video and you disagree with anything I said, I would love for you to let me know. Like, what do you think I need to correct? Because like I said, it's just based off my perception, which could be totally different from other people who've had experiences in these countries. Yeah, so thanks for watching the video. Feel free to subscribe. I spend most of my time on Twitter and Instagram, on social media, so you can follow me at Donna.Culture there as well. Bye. So Rwanda is the land of wood and water. Oh God. So Rwanda is the land of 1,000 hills, and Jamaica is the land of wood and water. So I had to come back to say one thing that I should have talked about that we have in common: one bag of mosquito. I don't know if you realize there are mosquitoes actually in my house right now, which is scary because I don't want to catch malaria.